process to put together this service. But in the end, what happened was so many different people found me. They said, "Oh, I hear you're going to be the rabbi for the service, and I'm very concerned. I want to make sure. I want to share. Everyone's got to know about this gentleman." And so it really told me a lot instantly about how dear and how beloved Leon was to the Cleveland community, but also the community and his family members in Israel, how much he matters to the people in Australia, and all around the world. And thank goodness for Zoom, as Yaakov said, because through the technology and through Zoom, all these kinds of people in the last 24 hours, it's amazing with God's help how we've been able to put together so many different things about the service. Being able to have Kaddish said with a minyan, being able to have this connection so we can all be together, and to be able to have great speakers who really knew him and historically can put together the picture of his most amazing and most impressive life. And so before we start, I just want to say that these words should be a comfort for him, a man who truly gave up everything in his life to survive, and for his family, for his people, and he lived through untold horrors, but came out of it with incredible faith and trust and peace with the world that he lived in. And he was such a likable person. He was so kind and beloved of people. He could be demanding, he could expect a lot from you, but you loved him that much more. And so it's truly an honor to be the rabbi and to be officiating his service. And I'm so glad that his family, Yaakov and Genya, and all of you can also participate with us as well. And even though you're on Zoom, we don't feel like you are so far away. We're going to begin with the recitation of the Psalms of the Tehillim. We're going to first say Tehillim Chaf Gimel. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo yexar, Binais teshech yarbitzeni, al mei menuchos yenachaleni. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit zomaves, la yira ki ata imadi. Shiftecha umishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Tairach lefanai shulchan, neged zoyrai. Dishante b'shem en roshi, kosi revaya. Achtov v'chesed yirdefuni, kol yemei chayai. V'shavte b'beis Adonai, la'arech yamim. A Psalm of David. God is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my torments. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. Now we're going to see together Tehillim Tesvav, Psalm 15. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagor b'y halecha, mi yishkain b'har kadshecha, Helech tamim ufayel tzedek, v'dover emes belvavai. Lo ragal al shanoi, lo asa l'reichu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Nivze be'einav nimas, v'es yirei Adonai yechabed. Nishba lahara v'lo yamir, kaspo lo nasan beneshech, v'shoichat al naki lo lakach. Oisa ele lo yimot le oilam. At this point, we're going to go ahead and begin the physical process of the burial, be able to give Leon the physical, earthly respects that he so deserves. We're going to go ahead and lower the casket, and then we're going to cover it with earth. And then after the coverage is occurring partially, we will be able to participate in the recitation of the Kaddish. And then after we've said Kaddish together, we will continue with the rest of the service, which is the eulogies and the memorial prayer at the end of the service.
Huh? Goes on.
Goes the holy.
Sir, can I just ask you to step out, sir? Would you step out?
Steve, you want to put a shovel full of earth on? Yeah, just ask a few people to do it, and then afterwards we'll cover it, and then later in the service everyone will get a chance to do so. Will you do the comments and the questions for a while? Or the family, you know,
Send me an email, I'll add it to my list whenever I
Here's something saying for
Yeah.
how well is that?
Yeah, it's not much fun. Put the small thing there, not the big, not the big thing. Otherwise it's not gonna close the lid. Can't stay it too high.
Yeah.
Just put it on the side. Yeah. Get some along this side right here. Put the bolt
Alright, so put the cover on now, guys.
step out on the way, please.
Leon are Lebesh Ben Yaakov. I have asked David Newman, whose parents were survivors also from Poland or from Hungary, to say the Kaddish Yasum, the Mortar's Kaddish, on behalf.
Amen.
Yisbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yispar, v'yisraman, v'yisnasei, v'yisadar, v'yisaleh, v'yisalal, shmerikut shabrichu, le'elam echabasah, v'shirasah, tishbasah, nechamasah, v'miram v'yomah, v'mru, amen. Yehesh amrat mishamai, v'chaim termelech, v'chol Yisrael, v'mru, amen. Yisrael, shalom, v'mru, v'yasa, shalom, v'leinu, v'chol Yisrael, v'mru, amen.
Now we're going to begin the next part of the service, which is the eulogies. Can everybody see okay over Zoom? Is Zoom working okay for everyone? I just wanted to check before we begin the eulogies, everyone can see okay and hear okay.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the main things about Leon is, besides the fact that he lived a life with extensive experiences, all kinds of places and situations that he had to survive, multiple labor camps, concentration camps, multiple chances to lose his life, but to be protected and to survive another day. But besides the blessing of survival, he had the blessing of charm and the blessing of being able to explain and to tell the story of his life so beautifully. And besides the blessing of being able to tell his story, he was further blessed with people to listen. And that I know all kinds of people had the time and had the attention and had the great interest to listen to his stories. I know certainly people from JFSA, Gilda Katz, and others, the people who served as his attorneys, his POAs, people who helped him with all his matters in his life. They also gave a lot of time to listen to his story and to give him the respect and importance. But one of the most amazing opportunities was the connection that was made between him and a gentleman named Sean Martin. And I know Sean Martin because a few years ago there was a Russian lady who wrote poetry and wrote a number of very artistic books, which were probably beyond the intelligence of most people, Russian speaking or not. And she had a firm desire to not be forgotten when she was in the nursing home and she only had months to live. And she desperately needed someone to make a biography, to write about her life, so that she would not be forgotten. So she found Sean Martin, or someone found Sean for her, and he listened so carefully and captured her memory. And so he must have done the same with Leon, but it was in a different way. They became great friends and they became very close. And they talked a whole bunch, I'm sure, over plenty of coffee and plenty of lunches. And so it's my great pleasure, my great privilege to have Sean Martin offer on behalf of Leon the main eulogy.
Good afternoon. Leon Weisberg was an outgoing, generous man whom I had the good fortune to meet about 14 years ago at the Monks Museum. It must have been after a talk I had given. He told me something about his story of surviving the Holocaust and asked if I would record his oral history. He wanted others to know about what happened to him and his family, and he knew he needed help. I agreed to meet with him, and we then started meeting often. From the start, he called me Mr. Sean, probably just translating the Polish title Pan to Mr. And so I called him Mr. Leon. I learned that Mr. Leon was born in Sędziszów, a small town in Poland, and that his family lived in Łódź in the 1930s. His parents were Yakov Weisberg and Ita Vilna, and he was the second youngest of 8 siblings. His father owned a flour mill and then a lumber yard in Sędziszów, before moving the family to Łódź to work in another lumber yard. They spoke Yiddish and Polish, the children went to a school where subjects were taught in Polish, the older children were involved in Zionist youth groups. Mr. Leon described his large family as observant and connected to the Jewish community. It was the years of the war that marked his life more than anything else, leaving him with a deep sorrow that was with him until the end. His family left Łódź for Sędziszów in the early days of the war. The family was soon separated, older family members scattered to different places. Mr. Leon's own experiences included periods of hiding in the forest, about 2 years in the ghetto in Sędziszów, over a year in the labor camp at Skarżysko-Kamienne, and then periods in Częstochowa, Buchenwald, and finally Theresienstadt, from where he was liberated by the Russians in May 1945. He was 10 to 16 years old during this period. He returned to Poland to look for family after the war and met up with his mother and surviving siblings in Wrocław. Then they moved to Munich, where Mr. Leon lived for a time, while other relatives decided to leave for Australia and others for Israel. Mr. Leon missed an opportunity to go to Australia, and so he decided to come with a friend to Cleveland in 1952. He lived from about 1953 to the late 1960s as a boarder with the Maltzmacher family, whom he always remembered and spoke fondly of often. He worked a number of jobs. He most often mentioned Picker X-Ray in Van Dorn, where he worked as an electrician and from where he retired at the age of 61, about 30 years ago. He worked, made friends, played cards, had a few girlfriends, enjoyed his time in the city, and traveled some to visit his distant family. In short, he lived a normal life, marked by sorrow, but also filled with an enjoyment of what he experienced and a tenacious will to live on. It's true that in many ways, Mr. Leon was a man of regrets. He regretted having had to live through the circumstances of war and the Holocaust, of course. But he also regretted, or at least constantly questioned, the choices he made. To leave behind his life as a young man in his 20s and early 1950s Munich, to not go to Israel or to Australia, to not marry and start a family of his own. In his regret, there was responsibility. He owned his choices, and he was fiercely proud of being able to take care of himself. More than sometimes, this was surely difficult for those who had to take care of him, especially those from JFSA, who worked with him most closely and whom I know he appreciated, though he might never have told them that. He was both proud and stubborn, and while that caused its share of problems, probably what I will remember most about him is his outgoing nature. He lived alone, and he wasn't involved in many activities, but he had been here since 1952, and he knew a lot of people. Our pattern was to meet regularly for dinner at Corky and Lenny's, or Jack's, or Huna and East on Richmond Road. He was a regular at all of these places, and he usually saw someone he knew. More than most people I know, he made an effort to speak to others in public. He knew he couldn't watch CNN in his room all the time, which was probably mostly what he did in his final years. He needed people around him, even if that just meant his bingo game on Tuesdays and Cafe Europa with JFSA on Wednesdays. Over the years, I took him to the Polish American Cultural Center here in Cleveland several times for some of their holiday dinners. I knew he would appreciate the old world food, and he even saw people he knew there from his work too. His weekly calls to his nephew Yaakov in Israel were a constant in his life. For someone so distant and so far removed from even such a simple technology as email, he was in remarkably close touch with family members around the world. He modeled some attitudes and behaviors all of us could do well to emulate: a persistence to carry on, self-reliance, a willingness to reach out, and a connection to family that never diminished. In the end, though, I come back to a feeling of regret myself. Over the years, we did finish his oral history, and the final version and other related papers are now a part of the collections in the Cleveland Jewish Archives at Western Reserve Historical Society. His story was a difficult one, though, and not easy for him to tell. I can't be sure that I always recorded accurately what he was trying to tell me, and I'm certain that there are errors and omissions. Looking back, I see that we captured much detail, like how he hid during a selection when he was suffering from typhoid, or how he was forced to make bullets for machine guns. But I know there's a lot missing. I'm grateful, though, for having had the chance to record his story, and more importantly, for the chance to get to know him and his family. He taught me much, not least that there is still much more to learn, and much more still to get right. Thank you.
As Sean said, he cherished his relatives overseas, and we have the privilege of calling upon Genya Weisberg, who's going to say a few words. Genya Jennifer, excuse me.
Thank you. We mourn the passing of our Uncle Leon, known to us as Lolek. He was for us the last link to an inspiring and resilient generation of Weisbergs. Although he lived to what is considered a good age, we are sad for the youth he never enjoyed and for the anxiety, stress, and loneliness he experienced in the decline of his last years. He was just a teenager, a survivor of Buchenwald and Theresienstadt, when he was liberated by the Soviet Army in 1945. Barely alive, starving and weak, he devoured the chocolates thrown to him by the well-intentioned soldiers. He became gravely ill and spent many weeks recuperating in the hospital. He was reunited with his mother Ita, brother Shmulek, and his three sisters, Ruja, Estusha, and Regina, in Germany. Two of his brothers, Abba and Aaron, and his father Yaakov, perished in the Shoah. The family made their plans for the future to get as far away from Europe as possible and to try and rebuild their lives. Some chose the newly founded State of Israel, and others went wherever they were received through the sponsorship of family or Landsmann. This was the Jewish post-war story. Lodek chose Cleveland in the Golden Medina together with other young people, and Cleveland is where he made his life these past 70 years, in spite of the pleas of his mother and siblings to move to Israel or Australia to be amongst family. Our uncle was fiercely independent, sometimes stubborn, and very private, and yet he thrived on companionship and very much enjoyed social interaction. In his younger years, he was strong, determined, and hard-working. Although he never had the opportunity to pursue an education and very much regretted this all his life, he was smart, well-informed, interested in people, and interested in the world. He was modest and proud. He was embarrassed if you tried to do something for him, give him a gift, or offer him assistance. He was respectful and kind, and became very upset if he felt disharmony among friends or family. He never spoke badly about anyone and always tried to keep the peace. Most of all, he was loyal and loving to his mother, brother, and sisters, and took great pride in their children, us, his nieces and nephews. Although he rarely travelled, he tried very hard to stay connected and to be part of our lives after our parents passed away. We are very grateful to those who have looked out for him. We are very grateful to those who have looked out for him over the years, especially Sean Martin, about whom he spoke often. We appreciate the efforts of Gilda Katz. We know how much he enjoyed participating in the Holocaust Survivor Program each week. We thank the staff of Stone Gardens who cared for him so well these past months. Our uncle was a humble man who didn't like a fuss or to be the center of attention. We appreciate all those who have come to accompany him to his final resting place and honor him for the good person, the mensch he was. May his memory be a blessing. Yehi Zichro Baruch.
Well, thank you, Genya, for your beautiful words. And they're not only a telling of his life story, but an inspiring word, and taking his life and his accomplishments to make us do more and be better people because of who he was. So next I call upon Yaakov Weisberg, who will share some words for us on behalf of a beloved uncle.
I apologize to the English speakers because I'm going to say the sped Hebrew, but you've heard part of it already, what Sean and Genya said I try to look at it in different angle. לא לך יקר. איני יכול לדבר אליך בלשון עבר. הלכת מאיתנו, היית אדם גדול שהערכתי והרצתי. קמת מהשפטות לניצול שואה אכזרית, והצלחת לשקם את חייך לדוגמה ולמופת. האדם אהוב ואהוד על כל משפחתך. בספר בראשית נאמר שמצווה גדולה להספיד את המת כראוי. שם כתוב ויבוא אברהם לספוד לשרה ולבכותה, ואמרו חכמים במסכת שבת, כל הבוכה על אדם כשר מוחלים לו על כל עוונותיו. לא לך יקר, היית אדם כשר במידותיך ובתכונותיך, אמיתי, ישר, הגון, אוהב בריות ועוד. קטונתי מלהספיד אותך, ומבקש אני סליחה ומחילה ממך ומהציבור, אם לא אצליח לעשות את שליחותי זאת בצורה טובה. במסכת ברכות מציינים כי מטרת ההספד היא להרים את הקול ולעורר את הציבור לבכי. אנחנו בוכים. אנחנו בוכים על הסתלקותך מהעולם, אדם טוב וישר כמוך, ששימשת לנו בדרכך דמות מופת חביבה ונעימה. בשולחן ערוך מציינים שכיוון שקשה לדייק באמירת השבחים, מוטב להוסיף בשבחים מאשר לגרוע מהם. דודלולק, ליאון, לייביש, ואולי גם אריה, אנחנו לא יודעים. הלכת לעולמך בכ"ט בתמוז תש"פ 21 ביולי, ערב ראש חודש מנחם אב. ימי בין המצרים שקשים לעם ישראל, ולנו קשה גם הפרידה ממך. דודלולק, היית אדם מיוחד, אוהב שמחה, אוהב שיחה, ודיברנו על כל כך הרבה נושאים, מסיפורי הילדות שלך, דרך תקופת השואה, ועד לשיחות כמעט אישיות, על החמצות והישגים בחיים. לגבי תקופת הילדות שלך, נולדת ליעקב וייסברג, ולאיתה לבית ולנה, עם עוד 7 אחים ואחיות. בשנת 1932, כאשר היית בן 5, עקב קשיים כלכליים עברה המשפחה ללודג' עד פרוץ המלחמה, ואז המשפחה התפצלה וחלק ממנה חזר לגטו בסנדישו. כנראה שב-1942-43 נרצחו 2 אחיך, אהרון ואבא השם ייקום דמם, שבאו לבקש אוכל מהשותפים שלהם שלפני המלחמה. הגרמנים העבירו אתכם למחנה עבודה סטאז'יסקו קמיינה, ועבדתם בכפייה בעיצוב תחמושת לצורר הנאצי. במחנה הזה נרצח אביך, יעקב, סבא שלנו. אשר המחנה פורק, עברת בין מחנות בוכנוולד וטרייסשטאט, ושם שוחררת. בחור בן 17 שעבר את התופת של המחנות. המשפחה התאספה במחנות עקורים בגרמניה, ונשארת שם מספר שנים עד להגיעך לארצות הברית בראשית שנות ה-50. שם התחלת בחיים חדשים, אבל עם נזקי טראומת השואה. דודלולק היקר, אי אפשר במעמד זה לספר הכל עליך, אבל אני רוצה להתמקד בכמה תחומים שעלו בשיחותינו השבועיות באנגלית וביידיש. דיברת על עם ישראל, והיו לך הרבה תובנות על עם ישראל והאירועים הקשים והאכזריים שעברו ב2000 השנים האחרונות, מאז חורבן בית המקדש ועד לימינו. ולך שאלות ותמיהות שהערכתי מאוד. היית אדם חושב, גם ללא השכלה פורמלית, אבל ידעת לחשוב ולנתח ולשאול את השאלות. לגבי מדינת ישראל ראית באוצר יקר, כל כך דאגת למדינת ישראל, נפרדת במלחמות שעברה והצטערת על כל חייל שנפל למען המדינה. התפיסה שלך הייתה רק להיות חזקים ולא לוותר, ולא לסמוך על אף אחד. ואמרת לי, ויתור הוא בושה ואסור למדינת ישראל להיראות חלשה. לגבי המשפחה, כל כך אהבת את המשפחות באוסטרליה ובישראל. הביקורים שלך שם וכאן היו שמחים ומרגשים. ודע לך, אני מקווה שגם הרגשת כמה שהמשפחה אהבה אותך בחייך ובמותך, כי היית אדם מיוחד. בחייך האישיים הצטערת שלא יכולת לרכוש השכלה פורמלית. זה מאוד כאב לך. וסיכמנו שהנאצים יימח שמם לא פתחו בתי ספר ליהודים, אלא רצחו אותם, רצחו את היהודים בדם קר, ואתה קיבלת בית ספר לחיים, להתמודדות עם החיים, איך לשרוד. עם הגיעך לארצות הברית היית צריך להתמודד עם פרנסה ועוד, וזה לא היה זמן ללימודים. אחת הנקודות שהעיקו עליך היה עניין הקמת המשפחה, שהיה נושא סתום ובלום ולא כל כך ידוע, אבל בשיחותינו הקצרות קצת נפתחת בעניין והצטערת שלא הקמת משפחה. והטריד אותי מדוע אדם מיוחד כמוך, חביב, אוהב אדם, אוהב חברים, לא הקים משפחה. נתתי לעצמי את התירוץ שאולי טראומת החיים הנוראים שעברת בתקופת השואה, שלא קל לאבד לבחור צעיר את האמון באנשים אחרים, אולי מסיבות אלה, אולי מסיבות אחרות, מי יודע. ובלונק היקר, היית אדם אינטליגנטי בצורה בלתי רגילה. היית אדם חושב, אדם סקרן, אדם מתעניין, ראית את העולם הגלובלי. היו לך תובנות וניתוחים מדהימים, ולמדתי ממך הרבה. תודה. השיחות איתך היו מרתקות. ובלונק היקר, אתה סוגר לנו מעגל, אתה אחרון לדור הנפילים של הורינו. דור שרק חלקו שרד את השואה והקים חיים חדשים. היו בני משפחה רבים שנרצחו בשואה, וביניהם אביך ושני אחיך וקרובים אחרים. דוד יקר, שימשת לנו ולי גם במיוחד דמות להערכה ולהערצה לדרכך ובהתמודדותך בחיים. אי אפשר לסיים פרק זה בחייך מבלי להביע תודות עמוקות וכנות למספר אנשים. והראשון שבהם, במר שון מרטי, שליווה אותך כל כך הרבה שנים, החל מביקורים ושיחות וכתיבה של ביוגרפיה מרשימה שלך, שהוא הצליח להוציא ממך ולכתוב את כל הדברים הללו, ויש לנו עותק על כך, ואנחנו אולי נוכל להוציא משהו לאור מהדברים הללו. שון לא רק היה חבר, רק לפני כמה ימים הלכת איתו במספרה. הוא היה כל כך מסור, ועל כך שון, תודתנו והמשפחה. כמו כן לגברת גילדה קאץ, העובדת הסוציאלית שטיפלה והתייחסה לדודנו לאו, ועשתה עבודה קשה, והצליחה לרתק אותו ולהביא אותו לפגישות השבועיות של ניצולי השואה. ולשני האחרונות שהתמנו להיות האפוטרופוסיות שלו, לקרין ולליס, אנחנו מאוד מודים לכם על תרומתכם ושמירתו ככל שהיה אפשר בחיים. דוד יקר, לך לשלום ותנוח בשלום על משכבך. תהיה נשמתך צרורה בצרור החיים. אמן.
We thank Yaakov for his most beautiful words, and I wish my Hebrew was better and I could understand every single word that you said, because each word was so profound. But I know at the end you spotlighted and you spent time thanking Sean and for his continuing the Masorah, the tradition of your family, so beautifully. And you thanked Gilda Katz and the GFSA people for their constant kindness and taking care of your great uncle. I just want to...
Now we relate you to the Todot of the thanks for Ran handling this Levaya in such a mechubad way.
Shkaya, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone who wanted to say a few words who was on the Zoom call?
פתחו את זה בעברית, אם מישהו רוצה להגיד דברים קצרים, אז כולנו מוזמנים.
So I will just close with what I may say, out of respect for Yaakov, and hopefully this is not a mistranslation, but what I drew from what Yaakov said, which I may say in English, which was so beautiful, was that you said, again, through lack of my understanding perhaps, but you described how he was a man who was deeply concerned about the world around him. Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, his family, were something of deep concern. It mattered to him so much. It was the most important thing. And you said he asked many questions. He was a very deep person and very introspective. And you said, why does someone like, maybe he said something like, someone like me who's, is social and likes people, enjoys, why is it not that God gave me, why did he not give me a family? Why did I not have the merit to have children and, to be able to have whom to share? Why am I alone, perhaps, by myself, without family in this country? You asked those questions, but I think that the answer to these questions you gave a hint at, and it's before us, is that he had the merit to share himself in such a beautiful way with Cleveland because of this unique situation. God didn't give him children, didn't give him offspring, but the whole of Cleveland is so changed because of him. And I think that, if I may say so, like you said, Yaakov, that it's not a coincidence that the Jewish people lose someone in the 9 days. These are very special days of mourning, days that we have to be reminded that there's sadness, but there's also strength and there's hope, and we're all together as one family, and that is our consolation. But to me, it's remarkable that he's one of the last survivors that we will have in Cleveland who can truly tell his story, who can speak. And it's not by accident that someone had such an amazing life history, such a uncanny ability to explain and to see the divine providence, to see the amazingness in his own life, and to be able to find people to share it with. And that he had in Cleveland such great people to help him and to listen. And so, it's a question, but hopefully an answer to a question that we have provided. And so we all pray for him, and we thank him for being who he was. We thank him for his courage, and as Yaakov ended with the most beautiful blessings, that God should encircle him in the bonds of eternal life. He should be reunited with his family, and he should all the difficulties of the Shoah and all the big questions that he had. Why did these things have to happen? Should be answered, and should be able to enjoy a beautiful peace and a beautiful faith and a beautiful trust in the presence of his relatives and with God. So now we move to the final stage of the service, which is the physical preparations, which are so important to take care of his physical needs in a kavadik, in an honorable way. So now we will just pause from the speaking as we take part in this. And for those of you on Zoom who can't do this, we definitely know if you were here, you would also be sweating and you would also be working hard with the shovels as we will.
Yeah, they have a tractor, which is good.
Huh?
They have a tractor. With some people. Guys, come around. Push the dirt down. Okay.
Everybody who has phones in the front pocket. Yeah, go on
Take
down
the
the
top
side
and
and
push it
push
close.
it down.
Keep working on your end.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Throw it on the other end over there. I'll get there.
Sit down. Yeah, no. Because the bottom is all probably wrong. Wait.
This corner there. Get the water.
Yeah, I'm trying.
What you do is get one straight down in there.
What?
Straight down in there. Yeah, just do it right in the middle. Just make a mouth and come out in the middle.
Alright folks, we'll stop here for now. We'll just give the ladies and anyone else who's left a chance to put in a shovel. So we invite the ladies, anyone else who hasn't had a chance to put in a shovel of earth to come forward. No, no other kind.
Or we have to fill it up or whatever.
Yeah, after we do the service and handle it, officially,
Do you guys think so?
yeah. All of you guys.
it.
So we close with just a few words. For his family has said that if anyone wishes to give something in his memory, they could contribute to the United States Holocaust Museum, the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, or the Survivors Initiative. We extend our condolences to his whole family, all of his beautiful, loving family, on the loss of a very, very dear human. Our condolences, and we pray that God should console you and strengthen you in these difficult times. To all of Cleveland also, who has lost a dear friend, a dear special survivor in our midst. Now we close the service with the recitation of the Kal Mali Rachamim prayer, which is a prayer that God should have mercy upon all of us, and in particular He should watch over and place under His wings those we have lost and have gone on to the next world. So we call Rabbi Alevsky, who is going to share with us the Kal Mali Rachamim prayer.
El Mali Rachamim Shoichein V'Meroimim Oy Hamtzei Menucha Nechoina Al Kanfei HaShechina B'Malois Kedoshim V'Tohorim Kezoyar Araki Amaziyirim Es Nishmas Leibish Ben Yaakov Sheholach Le'Lamoi Ba'avur Shenoiten Slokavad Askaras Nishmasoi Began Eden Tehei Menuchasoi V'chein Baal HaRachamim Yastireu b'seiser knafav L'olamim V'yitzroir b'tzroir HaChayim Es nishmosoi Adonai hu nachalosoi V'yanuach HaMishkavoi b'shalom V'noimar Amen.
O God full of mercy, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the wings of the divine presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and the pure ones who shine like the glow of the firmament, for the soul of our most beloved Leon Weisberg, Labish the son of Yaakov, who has gone into his world, and for whom, without pledging, we will give tzedakah. May his resting place be in the Garden of Eden, and may the Master of Mercy shelter him in the shelter of his wings for all eternity, and may he bind his soul in the bonds of life. God is his heritage, and may he repose in peace on his resting place. And we say together, Amen. So his memory should be for our blessing. He should forever rest in peace. And we thank everyone for participating. And I wish everyone a good day and shkayach to everybody.